Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this event brought to you by the Black Country Studies Centre and University of Wolverhampton's ArtsFest Online. I'm Dr Jenny Gilbert, the coordinator of the Black Country Studies Centre, and it's an absolute pleasure to be introducing you to two female Black Country artists who are working at the intersection of science and art. Sue Brisco and Charlotte Dunn are going to be talking this evening about their work and about their involvement in the British Art Show 9 Offsite9 programme, which was put together by Creative Black Country to showcase some of the most creative and innovative artistic work happening in the Black Country region. The British Art Show actually finished last weekend, and I was lucky enough to go along when it was sort of installed at the University School of Art and at Wolverhampton Art Gallery, and it was just such a wonderful moment to see such a high profile and brilliant exhibition in the Black Country. And it's really an honour for us to be able to showcase some of the region's artists who have been involved in the Offsite programme. So just to quickly introduce you to both Sue and Charlotte. So Sue's artistic process sits at the boundary between art and science, where her outcomes explore interplays between drawing, film and sound. Her work is very much inspired by the natural world, especially the ideas of plant sentience and communication. And more recently, she's become interested in anatomical landscapes within our bodies and connecting science and medical health. So tonight, Sue's going to be talking about her Offsite9 project, Kindness is Free, Let's Pass It On, which explores the science of kindness and the astonishing biology that takes place inside our bodies when we give or receive kindness. And after Sue has spoken about her work, we're going to be joined by Charlotte Dunn. Charlotte's work looks at manipulating scientific and natural history imagery and locations. She transforms their context through methods of presentation. Drawing is the essential medium within Charlotte's work, and methods of scientific illustration create a foundation for her to distort, commenting on their purposes to educate. Charlotte's Offsite9 project was called Plant Fete, and it reenacted the traditional plant sales that used to take place in the 1800s in Wolverhampton's West Park. So before I quickly hand you over to Sue to get things started, just a little bit of housekeeping. My lovely colleague Claire from ArtsFest Online is going to be online, and she's going to be monitoring the Q&A and chat functions throughout this evening's event. The event is being recorded, so please don't share any personal details in the chat or Q&A, but please do feel free to post any questions or thoughts while Sue and Charlotte are talking. And the format of the event is that Sue and Charlotte are going to talk about their work, and then we're going to have a discussion, kind of an in-conversation after their talks. And I think it'll be really interesting to kind of unpick some of the intersections with their work, but also perhaps where there are those departures as well, and things are a little bit different for both of them. So yeah, please get involved. As I say, there'll be time for chat at the end of the event. And without further ado, I would like to introduce Suzanne Brisco.
Hello, right. Green. Okay, can you see that okay, Jenny?
Perfect, so
wonderful. Okay, well, hello there everyone, and thank you for inviting me tonight to talk to you about my biggest passion, which is art, and also the theme of kindness. And I thought I'd share with you, to start off with, a little bit about who I am as an artist, and then talk about my art science links, and then go on to the involvement in Offsite9, and then finally the science of kindness. Now, I am a former student of Wolverhampton University, and I studied for a fine art degree, and then I went on to do my master's. So I spent several years at the uni on a beautiful artistic journey and forged many friendships. When some of those went on to create professional links in the art world. Just to give you a bit of context about the imagery you can see on the screen, they're actually microscopic images of pollen, and this was from a previous Arts Council funded project, which I was very privileged to do, called Sneeze. And it was monitoring the journey of pollen and its effects through our respiratory system, and then ultimately causing hay fever. And I collaborated with some health medics at the Royal Brompton Hospital in London, and also the pollen counting service. So this little chappy here, I don't know if you can see me waving the arrow. The one at the front is from tree pollen. It's from an alder tree, and that causes problems with hay fever. The one in the background is of a daisy pollen, and that's less problematic in hay fever. The next two slides I was going to whiz through quite quickly. It just gives you a bit of an insight into who I am as an artist and a little bit about my practice. And as Jen said, my interests lie at the interface between art and science, and I approach it in a way as to try and communicate or share scientific ideas through the eyes of an artist. And I have got a science background, and I've also got a teaching background. So I think I've just emerged through this into the art world. It's the way I look at the world. And as said in the bio earlier, I have been really quite interested in plant sentience and communication. Who would have thought that plants can think for themselves and can communicate with each other? But it's a fascinating field. And there's a lot of research going on in this area, especially because we're thinking now about the future of colonising the moon and having bases there, and manned visits to Mars. And there's this innate need for us to try and grow food in hostile circumstances. So it's an interesting area that I've been following. I've also been studying botanical art, and I did a very formal course with the Society of Botanical Artists. And this was a way of communicating art and science, but looking at plants in detail. It really improved my watercolour skills, and I think I'd like to pursue this a lot more, but put a more contemporary slant on it as I go along. Well, those two slides could have shown you a little bit of how my artwork has formed now, and I'll talk to you about the Offsite9 project. It was actually a mutual friend that I studied with at university that she was appointed, that was Com Atchell, and she was appointed an Offsite9 ambassador for Creative Black Country. And she prompted me to apply for this. And she brought together me with another artist called Kanj. And here you can, in the top left-hand corner, you'll see Kanj there and myself. We didn't know each other at the time. We just sort of knew each other briefly to say hello, but we certainly know each other very well now. I'd be happy to talk about the application process and how we work together afterwards if anybody's interested. But Kanj and I first met up together back in June last summer, and we were just coming out of lockdown then. And it was really difficult times for us all. Kindness seemed to be on the tip of everybody's tongue, and it really mattered. So, and we also realised that it bridged all cultures, all ages and gender. So it was like totally inclusive and very current. And we thought this was quite an uplifting message to share. So the project we shaped together was called Kindness is Free, Let's Pass It On. And it was the collaboration between the two of us. Kanj was looking at kindness in the community, and I was looking at the science of kindness. and there were layers of public participation and poetry, and it was all set in a community focus. The venue that we decided to use was Newhampton Arts Centre because of its community links, and it was got quite an interesting exhibition space. We'll just share a few of the stats with you. Hopefully you can see that, but we had over 409 visitors altogether over the 2 weeks. We had 40 participants taking part in a Postcards of Kindness workshop. And then we had a huge engagement online social media platforms. We also had an opportunity to do live radio. Oh my life, that was an experience. Anyway, I could talk about that after if you would like, and they did a promo film for us as well. So there were lots of opportunities also coming our way. Well, this is now talking about the science of kindness and how this all came about. I was trying to, I wonder if you could just try and remember, just for now, a time when someone showed you kindness or you were kind to them. And I wondered, how did it make you actually feel inside? Well, it's often been described as this lovely warm feeling that we get that washes all the way down over us. And it's also been found, science has been finding that it's actually due to brain chemistry changing. And so it was, I spent nearly 2 months researching, first of all, into this reason, why do we feel so good when kindness has passed? And for me, it's always important to get the science accurate. And to do that, I spoke to health professionals. I actually managed to speak to a retired neuroscientist, a clinical psychologist, a physiotherapist, and also spoke to people from the voluntary sector, and all their different perspectives and the science together, and my artwork started to evolve. And then I had the hard time of translating all of that into art forms that were thought-provoking, informative, but they had an aesthetic appeal. And just to add as well, some of the inspirations I get for my artwork is looking at the drawings of science that scientists have done back in history, back in the 19th century, and also looking at microarchitectures of the brain. And then that's juxtaposed with 21st century imagery as well. So my work becomes this blend of past and present influences. So if I just talk to you about the drawing that you can see on the screen now, it was a small watercolour study, an ink wash, that I actually drew while I was recording the whole process in time-lapse mode. And this was actually postcards of kindness that I was producing for the workshop I mentioned earlier. Now, as you can see, it all starts in the brain. There's a little message here, and an act of kindness releases a cocktail of hormones, sometimes referred to as a cocktail of happy hormones. And that's oxytocin. If you can see that written down the side, going vertically, serotonin and dopamine. Oxytocin is actually a hormone, but serotonin and dopamine are neurotransmitters. So what happens then, this hormone gets released by a little structure in the brain, and this is called the hypothalamus, and we've all got one. I've got one and you've got one. And what happens when that hormone is released, it spreads the oxytocin and the effects all the way down this vagus nerve that's reaching all parts of the body. And that ultimate reaction is it actually makes us feel a lot calmer. That's what the vagus nerve does. It actually slows us down. So we start to feel a little happier, less stressed. We feel calmer, and we actually feel healthier. I don't know whether you can see these two little drawings down here at the bottom, but there's a little cocktail glass, which is referencing that cocktail of hormones I was mentioning. And then here on the right, we've got a reference of a heart diagram. And that writing around there actually tells you, I don't know whether I can actually zoom into that. Kindness is good for the heart. It softens and widens the arteries. That it actually acts as a vasodilator. And what that does then is reduces our blood pressure and lowers our heart rate. So it's incredible what a simple act of kindness can do on our body. And it's a completely win-win situation, because both the person who's given and receiving kindness gets these health benefits. So that's an incredible message that I was sharing in the exhibition. One of the other questions I asked myself when I was starting this was, what colour is kindness? What colour do I use? And for me, I instinctively just went to orange and blue. And I think that's because it denotes the colours of the sky and the colours of the sunshine. So I think that's probably why I gravitated towards those. So that little drawing then was developed into a larger scale piece. And here's a picture of me. It's not that I like to be photographed, but it just gave you an indication of scale. And here you can see the hypothalamus, as I mentioned. And there's a film being projected over this. The film is actually 3.5 minutes long. So the drawing actually becomes the screen. What happens is that the film narrative is suggesting that a simple, kind smile, I've used the smile as a symbol of kindness, and then it ultimately multiplies into a crescendo of smiles, and then you actually see the heart beating at some stage, and you see the whole thing washing down all the way down our body to give us that lovely feeling. And just to add to that film, I'm going to play you the film in a minute. Hopefully you can hear it. But I needed to ask myself, what on earth does kindness sound like? And for me, I went to layers of birdsong and human voices and heart beating slightly in the background, and with an alien twist. So hopefully when I play the film, you'll be able to pick that up. So when I play the film, there'll be, let me see if it will hopefully play. Okay, on the left, you've got the film just on its own playing, and on the right, you have the just let you watch this for a while. I've stopped it, just gave you a bit of a flavour of what the film installation looked like. And just to say that the people that attended the exhibition, that's what you heard when you walked into the space. And many people commented on how calm and uplifted they felt while they were in the exhibition space, and how they were starting to feel a lot more positive about things. So this is another piece of work which I produced for the exhibition. I needed a lot of smiles in order to make this artwork. I used for the social media for this, and I posted a short video appeal and asking people to donate their smiles. And I actually received over 80 smiles altogether. Quite a few of them, I have no idea who they were from. And it was a totally new way of working for me. I think it's probably my age, but I'm not a great lover of social media, but we have to do it. And this artwork serves to demonstrate how research has shown that kindness is incredibly infectious, and it's got a reproductive value of 5. So what that's trying to say is if you've got one person just smiles, then that inspires 5 more to smile, and each of those will inspire 5 more, and then each of those 5 more again. So it's like a ripple of smiles going out into society, just like a pebble falling in a pond and the waves rippling outwards. Well, that's a wonderful thought, but it doesn't continue after 3 degrees of separation. It actually weakens. So what I was appealing to people was that they should try and keep practicing kindness and keep topping up those wonderful effects to our bodies. And just moving on, this is the last slide now. These are 3 large-scale hangings which I showed, and they were of microanatomies inside the brain that actually had effects of kindness, all associated with kindness. And if I just chat to you about this little, this cell here, the one that you see in the middle, that's actually called a star cell, and it's, or an astrocyte, and it's a little tiny workhorse, and it makes up half of the brain cells that we have. And what it does, these processes here reach out and actually hug the synapse. And that's where the neurotransmitters are hanging around, and they will be passing on thoughts and impulses. And what that little cell does there, it resets the synapse each time a thought comes through, and there must be thousands and millions of them, and it sets it for the next signal to come through. And because there's so many neurotransmitters hanging around because of the stimulation from a kindness act, then it keeps us in this heightened sense of alertness. And it's often referred to as a legal high or a helper's high. So it's a wonderful thought that who'd have thought that kindness can have all these wonderful effects on inside our body, as well as making people feel good as well. Well, that's brought me to the end of my talk now. There was so much more I could have said, but perhaps some of this will arise in the conversations afterwards. And I'd be delighted to answer any questions afterwards. So I'll leave you now and say thank you very much for listening, and we'll speak later. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Sue. That was wonderful. And just before we came online, we were sort of previewing Sue's slides and the video, and it is that thing that you see smiles and your instinct is to smile along with it as well. So yeah, I'm definitely going to be going out into the world and remembering that the factor of 5 for every time we smile.
Thank you. Okay, shall I stop sharing now?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
So next up, we have Charlotte Dunn, and her work Plant Fate was part of the Offsite9 programme, and I've been sort of following along with that over the last couple of weeks on social media. So it'll be just fascinating to hear more about that from Charlotte. So over to you, Charlotte.
Hello everyone. So I'll share my screen. Is it gonna be good to me? There we go. Let me just move this over. So like Sue, I'm just going to go through a little bit about me, what I usually do, because my project Plant Fate for Offsite9 was a little bit different to what I usually do. Like Sue, I'm very influenced by science. I'm very influenced by science illustration, and how in the past we used science illustration to understand the world around us, and how that has become distorted now, and how accurate we take those illustrations to understand. So this was the logo I developed for Plant Fate, and this was actually at the beginning, back when we got the offsite commissions. I started drawing plants and looking to the natural world, and this was just a scraper board, and I made into a logo for my project. But I'll explain more about that project first. I'll just show you a bit about my practice and how my practice led in to doing a community project such as Plant Fate. So this was a project I did last year for the NHS. It was an NHS trail in Worcester, and the NHS worked with Mind on this trail, and for this project I was looking at PET scans. I'm very concerned in my practice with medical imagery and how we translate medical imagery into understanding what's going on inside us, and particularly with invisible illnesses and mental health. So how if we were given a picture of ourselves inside, it would help us to begin to understand what's going on inside us. So these are actually images of different people. There was 8 pictures altogether, PET scans of soldiers who are suffering from PTSD and people who aren't suffering from PTSD. I then printed these on large forms of film there, and they were hung in the windows of shops across Worcester. There was no differentiation in the way I hung them, and I was trying to express the idea that people suffering with PTSD or people not suffering from PTSD, you can't actually differentiate them from the front, but inside the patterns in their brains are very, very different. Therefore people, if they were suffering from PTSD, you could show somebody what was going on in your brain if you had a medical image of the brain. And these are PET scans, so they were produced on ink, and then I had them printed on film. And then this project was a project I did, I think it was the year before last now. But again, this was about hidden illnesses and how we try to express our hidden illnesses through imagery. So these were actually MRI scans done of 3 hidden illnesses. So this is a bit of a blurry image, but the one on the far left was cystic fibrosis, the one in the middle was epilepsy, and the one on the far right was arthritis. I'm epileptic, I have epilepsy myself, and this project was quite insular in a way, because that is actually me. That is a picture scan of my head. So when I had an epilepsy seizure. So what these were, I drew these on film, which is in the same way as magic lantern slides were drawn in the 1800s. And magic lantern slides were drawn to make us understand in the 1800s what was going on. They were used by the medical professionals and doctors, and they were used as drawings. So these were drawn in the same way as magic lantern slides, and then layered up. So you can't really see here, but they're on 3 different sides, and then the light shone through, and it was just a way of expressing what's going on inside us, and I encourage people to talk about their hidden illnesses through these, and project their hidden illnesses onto themselves and really embrace with what's going on inside them. So this project is a long time ago now. This was a project I did in a garden. So I'm just going back a bit here, because like Sue, I've always been really interested in botanical illustrations, and that were done years ago for us to understand the natural world. And this was a project I did in Bournemouth Gardens, which is where I studied at university. And basically I made a bit of a gardener's explorer's den, because I found out that the botanical gardens in Bournemouth, they bought lots of exotic plants from different countries in, and they bred them together. And what the scientists used to do, they used to make drawings of these different plants and try to work out what the new plants were going to look like just from a drawing. And really, that's a very silly way now of how we would never do that. But I found that very interesting. So this was a bit of a gardener's scientist's lair that I created in Bournemouth Gardens. So all of these plants, you see the drawings I've done, but none of them are real plants. They're mixtures of random plants that I put together. But because they were presented in this way and people could come into the gardens, people started to believe that these were real plants. And then also I made these models as well, which they've all gone a bit floppy in this picture, but yeah, I made some models of random plants that I'd mixed together and put them in plant pots. But because of the way they were presented, people started to believe that these were actually real plants because they were presented as a scientific illustration. So I've always been interested in the natural world as well as illnesses and our scans. It's just the representation of science, I think, is probably the most underlying factor here. So this is how my projects really began, my Offsite9 project. So last year I was asked by the STEM team, who are science, technology, engineering and maths outreach team at the University of Wolverhampton, to work with them on a project in West Park. I'm not from Wolverhampton, I'm from Bridgnorth, and I never visited West Park before. But Martin, the head of the STEM team, he was very interested in this structure, which is obviously, for some of you might know, is the bandstand in Wolverhampton. And he knew the history of this bandstand, and he wanted to do a project, basically a community project for everyone around Wolverhampton to enter how their life had been influenced by science. And he asked me to be the guest artist and mix together all of these ideas that people had entered into their website and make this structure inside the bandstand, because the bandstand was it had a lot of engineers working on it. It was like a feature years ago, and it was a big feat of engineering in the past, obviously being influenced by science there and people's life being influenced by it. So I became familiar with the park then, and I realised that there's quite a history to this park, and when it came up, the idea to do a proposal for Offsite9, I saw that one of the backgrounds of but one of the sort of ideas behind British Art Show was the reparative history. So the only thing I really knew about Wolverhampton and the reparative history was that bandstand, because I learnt that from Martin. So I went to look into more history of the park, and I found out there's just some background here. So throughout the development of the park, many gifts were made to the park in the early years, including ducks, swans for the lake, glacial boulders, and the four-faced clock. And the park became a community project with members of the public coming together in many different ways to improve the look and the feel of the park. The park's crowning glory, the conservatory, was built in 1896 with the proceeds from the town's floral fete held every year in the park. The large floral fete was then held in West Park between 1889 and 1939 and provided a place for people to exchange plants they had grown on their own to raise money for the park, and created a big community event for everyone working within the area at the time. So this fete got people from the industrial communities to come out and begin to appreciate nature and be part of this community event, which was also a theme of British Art Show 9 coming to Wolverhampton, was the tactics of togetherness. And the fact that I'd seen that this floral fete had brought lots of people from across the industrial community together in one place, which was a very natural place. You know, it's a big contrast to how Wolverhampton generally is shown as an industrial community, but it brought everybody together, growing plants, bringing them together, and in a way it was a bit of a community art project, if you look at it in that way. Everyone was growing plants, they were bringing it together, and the proceeds were all coming together to buy that beautiful conservatory that we now see. So I really liked that idea, and I thought that fate was very similar to a bit what British Art Show was doing. So I took the idea of the floral fete, and I wanted to bring people together to go out into the natural world for my project for Offsite9, and go and appreciate what was in West Park, and go and start to draw and have a look around what they could see in their local communities, and basically make drawings and create pieces of artwork that they could then send to me. So this was some of the artwork that I got. I opened an open call out in September last year, and it finished in February. So basically I encourage people to do some drawings of the natural world, to go out and become explorers, if you like, and send me in their drawings that would then make up a fate stand. So these were some of the ones I got. These were from a local artist, the ones on the right, from a local artist called Graham Everett, who actually went into the park and did these scans of some of the trees within West Park. And then these ones on the left were from a local art group who took it upon themselves to go out into the park and do a bit of a trip and draw what they could see, or draw what floral plants they could see at home. So this was the stand that I made with the help of the School of Art technicians. So the stand was influenced by the traditional floral fete, and it was made up of recycled wood. And what I wanted to do, I wanted to give that sort of make the idea again of everyone coming together and bringing a plant like they did back in the floral fetes in West Park, but also benefiting from it as well, because they benefited from the conservatory. So I decided to do a plant swap. So basically over 5 days at School of Art and in West Park, I put my stand, which is made up of the people's drawings here, which were printed, the ones that I got, in the School of Art and in West Park, and people bought a plant and they took a plant over those 5 days. So it was a community plant swap, and it was a forever evolving stand, obviously, because people were bringing and taking the plants. I had a whole range of plants, but they were all British plants, and they're all because I wanted to keep it associated with West Park. And then here it is when it was at West Park. So I was at West Park for a day. I had over 75 visitors come and bring their plants on that day. It was got quite busy for me. And I had loads of people come on that they realised that they did have these plant sales at the park, and some people even remembered them, which was brilliant. And it brought people in from lots of different communities. A lot of elderly people who had nothing to do with the art world. They didn't even know about British Art Show on, but they saw my advertisement for a plant plant fate, and they automatically grew a plant and brought it into me and swapped it for another one. And I think it was that bringing in of other people that weren't necessarily related to the artwork in Wolverhampton that was probably one of the most rewarding parts of it, because they could take part in a piece of art even if they didn't do art. They grew plants, and it became an installation that was forever changing throughout the course of the 5 days, and it did highlight that tactics of togetherness, which is what I really wanted it to do, bringing everybody together. And I got such a wide range of plants throughout the day, throughout the time I was there, and in the School of Art as well. And then at the end of the project, all of the plants went to the Good Shepherd, which is a charity in Wolverhampton, for their community garden. So again, that was bringing people together. It was benefiting people from everything. And I learned a lot about plants throughout those 5 days. I'm not the best gardener, so it wasn't the best project for me. But I'll just show you a quick video here of what the plant stand looked like inside the School of Art. And there's a bit of me talking as well. Please ignore my voice. Hello, I'm Charlotte Dunn, and this is my Offsite9 project, Plant Fate. My project is essentially a plant swap. It celebrates the plant fates that happened in West Park between the 1800s and the 1930s. These plant fates that were held in West Park raised money for the conservatory that is now the crowning glory of the park. So the stand that you can see behind me is made up of images and pictures painted by local art groups and local artists from around the surrounding area. And what I've done is taken the plant swap to West Park and the School of Art to celebrate these plant fates that brought everyone together in the 1930s and 1800s to make up the beautiful area that is West Park. I aim to bring people together. I won't let you show you all that, but so I've just said most of it. So yeah, it was a great project, and as I say, it was something very different for me. Usually everything I do is related around science and related around hidden illnesses, but it was that natural world element, I think, that I wanted to bring people together again. And the work that I usually do, it does bring people together because they're talking about, you know, their hidden illnesses and science, but this project also brought people together in exploring the natural world and getting out there and, you know, growing their own plants and bringing them together. So yeah, that's it. I'll pass you back to Jenny if I haven't spoken too fast.
That was wonderful, Charlotte. Thank you so much. It really I wasn't actually able to make the event as I was at a wedding, but it was just lovely to be able to see it there. And that story about the elderly people coming along and almost accidentally taking part in art, that's wonderful. So I'm going to set the ball rolling with a few questions. I'm going to start with one that I've been thinking while you've both been talking, really. I'm a historian, but there seems to be elements of history in both of your work. Could you tell me about the sort of historical sources that you've used, and perhaps any archives or imagery that particularly inspires you?
So I'll go first. Sorry. So my work really, the whole basis of my work and where it started, even way back when I was at university, it started with natural history illustration and how natural history illustration was made for us to understand the world that we didn't know. So it was a scientific source originally, and yet it could be really, really inaccurate. And that was a big source for my work and how it generated. I did a lot of work back then in how, and I still do really, in how scientists think and how artists think, and how scientists always have to be accurate, and they try to aim to be accurate in what they do, and artists don't always have to be. And I think that contrast is summed up in a natural history illustration, and that's a lot of what my work's based on. And for Plant Fate, yeah, I did go into the archives at Wolverhampton to start to look at the history of the plant swaps and the Plant Fate in Wolverhampton. And as I said, a lot of people even remembered them happening. So I think they must have gone on a lot later than I even put down in my proposal, because yeah, I had a lot of elderly people come and say, oh yeah, I remember the big fates and everything. So yeah, there was a lot of history in a lot of aspects that I do, really.
Wonderful. And how about you, Sue?
I think for me, the accuracy is always important, but I've been fascinated about how scientists of the past would record their work. they didn't have photographs as such like they do now, especially if they were using microscopes. So if you can imagine a scientist looking down at a slide of sections of the brain or whatever other parts, they're starting to make drawings of science. And I think looking at some of those drawings have been quite fascinating. And they're beautiful art forms in their own right, but they have accuracy as well. Charlotte was talking about the necessary need for accuracy. So I think that's what's inspired me. And also Goethe has been looking at the spirit of plants as well. When I was looking at some of the botanical studies, as part of that botanical course I was mentioning, we had chance to go to Kew Gardens and have a look at some of the older illustrations, and giving you a chance to get your nose up really close and have a look. And they were sort of using taking the plant apart in parts, but illustrating them in those different ways. So I think it's all that science recording of the past that's kind of influenced my studies, and then looking at more modern science as well. So it's becoming this blend somehow. Especially I love looking at Leonardo da Vinci's anatomical drawings. Went to see those at in London when they were out, and they're just beautiful ink studies. So I think I'm just fascinated with their style of drawing, but also the accuracy. So always needing to remain faithful to the science. So I think that's where I come from, really.
Okay. Lovely, thank you. I'm going to bring up a word that starts with C and ends with Ovid. And it's kind of hard to talk about projects that have been created over the past kind of 2 years without talking about the impact of the pandemic, and especially when you're talking about art and science. And Charlotte, with yours, I was thinking people became absolutely addicted to plants during lockdown. And again, that link with kindness and as well of kind of just being kind to people throughout what was a very difficult time. How mindful were you both of that entering into the work? Would these works have taken the form that they did in a different context?
I think mine would have been, well, I'm glad I didn't have to do it virtually, because I don't know how I would I would have done that. But yes, yeah, I was quite lucky in that way. But yeah, I mean, I couldn't have done it. I couldn't have done a plant swap with COVID. But I think probably when the time I was thinking of it, I probably did look at how, when I was doing my proposal, I did look at how people were going to the natural world for a bit of solace in that time. And I think that was what I was looking for a bit, because when I did the art science project with the STEM team, that was in the middle of COVID, and we manned that big structure in the bandstand, and we did get a lot of people walking around just saying, oh, it's nice to see something in the park and see something different, because I've been inside for so long. And I even got that when I was in the park this time, you know, people saying, I had a running club come round and saying, oh, it's nice to see something different and seeing something I can read and something to stimulate me because I'm working at home. And I think, yeah, we did look to the natural world in that time, and it did bring us some sort of happiness, really, you know, like Sue's project, we looked outside of our window, and because that's all we could do at the time. And I think, yeah, a lot of people got into their gardening, and I suppose that's probably where my idea kind of latched onto a bit when that started. But yeah, I mean, I've always been I had to shield. Because I'm a vulnerable person, and I think I've only got a little garden, and even I'm a worse gardener in the world, but even I went outside and planted a few plants, and it brings you joy that you actually got something to do, and your mind's something's happening, and you're putting your effort into something. So yeah, definitely influenced it in that way.
I think for us, when we got together, Kanj and I'd already been thinking about the possibility of postcards of kindness. It was something that was a project I was starting to consider. And I think that as we got round the table and started talking about our ideas, I presented this idea of kindness, and it kind of took momentum, because in the pandemic, things were really tough. And when Kanj and I met together, we were literally just putting our heads above the parapets, you know, we were like a little bit wary of where we were going. And also, you know, when we were standing on the doorstep and clapping for the NHS, I got a really, you know, that warm sense, that feeling I was mentioning, I actually felt that, because we were starting to acknowledge neighbours that we didn't really know before and sort of waving to them. And it was all this coming together that started to make us think how positive kindness is making people feel. Kanj had been looking at kindness in the community and people who'd carried out acts of kindness there. And because I'd sort of thought about this lovely feeling we were getting, and then I'd chanced upon a podcast about kindness on radio, BBC Sounds, and I was thinking, oh my life, it's real. This feeling, this nice feeling that you get is actually so real. So I think it's, all this kindness was helping us to make our cocktails of happy hormones, and it was making us all feel better and looking out for each other, which is like a community spirit that, you know, we used to have years ago, but we seem to be looking after ourselves a lot more now. So I think it was this fostering the togetherness. That was one of the criteria for the Offsite9 project. So I think that's how we sort of took it, really.
Okay, wonderful. Just to say, anyone in the audience, if you do have any questions for Sue or Charlotte, please pop those in the Q&A box now. But I just want to talk a little bit more, while people are sort of typing their questions, about the Offsite9 experience, really. And I suppose if you could sum it up in 2 or 3 words for you, what would it be, or what was that overriding sort of feeling of it all?
Well, I mean, it was stressful. It was stressful. I think our meeting yesterday, we had a meeting yesterday. It was stressful, but it's brought, I think, the whole thing and the British Art Show coming to Wolverhampton, it's definitely created a bit of an artistic community within Wolverhampton. I mean, I'd never met Sue. I'd heard about her work that she'd done because we do very similar stuff. So we you know, and I've met Kanj, who Sue's worked with 3 times now, and I never met her because we kept going to the same events, and we just ended up in the same place. And it's lovely to connect to other artists in the community, and you know, I think it's really created this artistic buzz within the city, which is great, you know, for everybody involved. And it's been nice to be part of it. You know, it's just been nice to be part of that. And a lot of, I said this yesterday in the meeting, but I was one of the last events, and I had the books for, we had these little leaflets with all the Offsite9 projects in, and we all had them, and I had a lot of people come up, and I'd offer them a book, and they'd be like, oh no, I've had one of them, I've been to all of the events. And I was like, oh wow, I was like, oh, that's really good. So they'd actually, you know, it made it like a festival, and people had followed it, and that's brilliant. The fact that we'd touched these people with so many art projects going on, and they'd actually made it the effort to go to everybody's project, and it had become like a bit of a thing for people to do, and that in itself was really rewarding. So yeah, despite its stresses of everything, it's been a really nice thing to be part of, just to you know, create this artistic community within the city. And I think British Art Show has definitely brought that out in Wolverhampton over the last couple of months, which has been great.
And I mean, you say Oh, sorry, I was just going to say, just picking up on that point about community as well, that both of your pieces of work, there was the artistic community as part of the wider project, but you were actually both going out there and working with the communities of Wolverhampton as well. So, yeah. Anyway, sorry, Sue, to interrupt.
I was just going to say I agree with Charlotte. It was stressful. When we found out we'd got the funding, we were really excited, and then it was, oh gosh, we've got to deliver this now. We worked well together, and we both had our own areas to work with, but we had to drive the whole project forward with lots of meetings. So I think for Kanji and I, the meetings were quite pleasant because she makes lovely cakes, so that was quite nice. I think the publicity as well. Working with Creative Black Country, they're a lovely organisation to work for, because they support you. If you're unsure about anything, it's easy to try and find out, so it's good experience. Yes, the meeting last night, it was a debriefing meeting. There were a few exchanged issues. Sometimes the funding issue was a little bit hard to manage. And it was like a festival, you're right. When you were going to other people's events, you were seeing similar people again. And the mayor, I don't know whether you saw the mayor at all, Charlotte, but the mayor came to our opening, and what was amusing, he's a charming guy, and he was really interested in what was going on, and because he was going to several events, we got to the stage where he knew our names, and he was sort of saying hello to us, you know, it was quite readily. So it's really, looking back now, it was a lovely experience. Our project has ended, and the evaluation has been sent in now, but we really enjoyed it. But I won't deny it had its moments. We were getting a little bit anxious about timing. It's at the last minute, you know, sometimes things go wrong at the last minute. So I think we're glad we went ahead, and it was a wonderful experience. So yeah.
I think it's that thing as well, that sort of coming out of the lockdowns, it's almost like life went from 0 to 100 miles per hour very quickly. So it's like these things that maybe have been put off, or, you know, sort of on the back burner whilst we've been sort of all shut away, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, this is actually happening now. And yeah, it's quite a relatable feeling, I think, in a lot of scenarios. So I've just had a lovely comment here from Moya. Yes, I agree, there's definitely been an artistic buzz in the city over the past few weeks. Thank you for this fascinating talk, Sue and Charlotte. Have any new ideas or directions emerged for you as a result?
For me, so I mean, a lot of the work I do, like I say, is usually driven by hidden illnesses and how we talk about our hidden illnesses. And I'm artist in residence at University of Birmingham at the moment, but I'm working with leukemia patients. And I think through this work, I've seen that I need to be a bit more open and talk to people, and sort of not be scared to approach people in real life about what they're doing in their life. I know that sounds a bit of a like intrusive thing, but when people were coming to the plant swap, they just opened up to me and talked to me about how they grew their plants and how they'd wanted to be involved and how they'd you know, and I think it made it sort of a whole experience. And I think as an artist, sometimes we're just a bit insular with what we're doing, and we might need to go out sometimes and talk to other people about what's going on. And particularly in this leukemia project that I'm doing, I'm talking to a lot more patients and seeing about their experiences and how it evolves. And community art has never I've only done 2 community art projects, but I would consider doing another one again from this, because it was just very rewarding, and particularly taking the plants to the Good Shepherd, and then they had their art event last Saturday, which I went, which was absolutely fantastic, and my plants were there in the garden, and it was all making them very happy, and that in itself was worth doing this project, because it was wonderful to see them all, the service users putting the plants in the garden and coming along. So yeah, I think it's made me a bit less insular as an artist, if that's a new idea in itself.
I mean, just picking up on something there, there's that idea like being around plants releases certain, this is my very, very bad science, so apologies here, but it's almost like there's an overlap there with you, the two of you's work, in as much as there's a lot of research around the effects of plants on people's health and well-being, and, you know, certain hormones and chemicals being released. So I think that's quite a, sorry, just while you were talking there, Charlotte, just that idea of people opening up, and yeah, there's something about what plants do to our brains as well.
Yeah, I mean, being in nature, I mean, it's proven that being in nature does help you. You know, it does help, scientifically proven that it helps you being outside. And when I was in the park, I had a whole running club come up to me, and they do that running club every Saturday, and a lot of them are people that work in Birmingham in offices, and they just come to this running club to get outside and to be out there. And they were saying it always makes us feel better seeing nature and being outside, because, and I mean, it is scientifically proven. So yeah, it ties into Sue's work, because that might release the same hormones down into the
yeah. Cocktail of happy hormones going. Yes, that's a I think for me, I've already done 2 creative Black Country projects in the past. One was looking at honeybees down the microscope and translating that into drawings and then into stitch. That was with the Embroiderers Guild. And I did another microscope seeing small exhibition where people were looking at the colour palette of nature, wildflowers throughout the summer. But I think for me, I kind of wait until there's I think you need to get an idea shaped up, and I sort of spend a lot of time thinking about that. So I've recently, I went to a workshop that Moya had got at Boundary Way, and that was about botanical inks. And I'm really interested in botanical art as well. And I can't help feeling that I might be able to combine this notions of plant sentience and botanical inks and the botanical art in some way, but that's probably a project waiting for evolving, I think, and I like to wait, and then when things start to feel right, then I'll start to look at funding opportunities. So and also I'm going away on a 3-month sabbatical to Italy, so whether I can do some more botanical work then while I'm away. So that's my plan really for the immediate future anyway.
That sounds utterly wonderful, Sue. You'll have to report back as to how that all goes as well. Wonderful. Yeah. So yeah, Moya's just said thank you, great answers. We're kind of reaching the end of this evening's event, and it has been an absolute pleasure talking to you both. Your work is both so different, but also at the same time you've got those real sort of synergies and sort of similarities as well. And yeah, thank you so much for sharing that with us this evening. And thank you also to Creative Black Country for their kind of coordination of the Offsite9 programme. It was a real chance to sort of showcase homegrown talent in the city as well. So thank you everyone for your time this evening. Stay tuned for other ArtsFest online events and Black Country Studies. Just visit our website, blackcountrystudiecentre.co.uk. Thanks again to Sue and Charlotte. A recording of this event will be available online within the next couple of weeks as well. So thank you again, and I hope to see you all maybe in person soon as well. But thank you and good evening. Bye-bye.
Bye.